As an avid traveler, I have endured my fair share of rude locals. Don't get me wrong, most of the time locals are perfectly polite, if not downright hospitable. But every now and then you encounter that special brand of surliness that makes you want to catch the next flight out. Based on years of globetrotting and surveying fellow wanderlusters, I've compiled this highly subjective list of the countries with the rudest locals. Now, before you get your lederhosen in a twist, I don't mean to imply entire populations are rude, just that these places seem to produce a higher percentage of grumpy gusses. Consider this your warning. The locals in these countries are not about to roll out the welcome mat. Proceed at your own risk, keep your wits about you, and don't take the bait if someone tries to provoke you. The rudeness may be more amusing in retrospect, but while it's happening, not so much. Without further ado, here is my list of the top 10 countries with the rudest locals, based on years of wandering the world. As an avid traveler, I've been to my fair share of countries that could kindly be described as lacking in hospitality, but there are a few that stand head and shoulders above the rest in terms of sheer rudeness. These are the places where locals seem to go out of their way to make tourists feel unwelcome. The French have turned surliness into an art form, from the dismissive wave of a hand to the condescending pft noise they make when you dare utter a word of English. The French ooze disdain for outsiders. Heaven forbid you mispronounce something or commit some unknown faux pas. You'll be treated like a dim-witted child in need of scolding. The eye rolls and heavy sighs alone are enough to make you want to catch the next train out of Paris. Venture outside the main cities and the reception isn't much warmer. Rural French folk seem offended you would deign to visit their little corner of the country. How dare we ignorant tourists invade their personal space? We clearly don't appreciate the real France. Well, excuses-moi for wanting to experience all your country has to offer, not just the postcard perfect parts. Russians have never been known for their hospitality. There's an overall dourness and distrust of outsiders that permeates the culture. In Moscow and St. Petersburg, locals barely make eye contact, let alone exchange pleasantries. Asking for help or directions is likely to be met with an annoyed shrug. Trying to converse in Russian, no matter how poorly, rarely elicits a smile. More often, you'll get an abrupt correction of your clumsy pronunciation and a curt instruction to just speak English. Despite wanting to engage with the local culture, as a tourist you can't help but feel like an unwanted intrusion. The chilly reception makes it hard to want to linger in this vast, complex country. The Greeks and Turks are two of my favorite peoples, but according to many tourists, their communication style borders on rude. Having lived in both countries, I get it. These cultures are blunt as hell. Small talk and sugarcoating are foreign concepts. If you ask a Greek or Turk their opinion, they'll give it to you straight, whether you want it or not. In Greece, directness is considered honest and forthright. Greeks value sincerity, so they'll tell you exactly what they think. Questions like, "How do I look?" or "Did you like the meal?" are answered with brutal honesty. As an American, the lack of obligatory niceties caught me off guard. I quickly learned not to ask questions I didn't want the answer to. The Turks are similarly brusque in their communication. Euphemism isn't in their vocabulary. Unvarnished truths are delivered matter-of-factly, without malice. This unfiltered style, combined with a tendency to escalate quickly in volume and passion, is off-putting for many tourists. But for Turks, speaking circuitously is tiresome and talking loudly is normal. Of course, there are rude Greeks and Turks, just like anywhere, but in general, these cultures simply favor directness over delicacy. Their bluntness isn't intended to offend, though it's often perceived that way by outsiders. As a visitor, try not to take the candor personally, and if you want to avoid an unsolicited opinion, don't ask. The Greeks and Turks mean no harm. They're just being honest. Call me uncultured, but after one too many encounters with surly German waiters and pushy Russian strangers, I had to vote these two countries as having some of the rudest locals. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are kind souls in Germany and Russia. I just haven't met many. My travels through Germany left me with the impression that efficiency and bluntness are prized over warmth or politeness. Want to order food? Be prepared for an abrupt "Was möchten Sie?" and not so much as a smile. Questions are seen as inefficient, so don't bother asking for recommendations or directions. Just point to the menu, eat, pay, and go. That's the German way. As for Russia, the only thing colder than a Moscow winter is the reception you'll get from many locales. Russians value directness to the point of abrasiveness. Small talk and pleasantries are seen as unnecessary. Get to the point or get out of the way. I once asked a shopkeeper, "Do you speak English?" To which he barked, "Little," and turned his back. Lovely. Of course, there are kind and hospitable people everywhere, even in Germany and Russia, but cultural differences in communication styles and views on politeness can sometimes come across as rude to outsiders. My advice, don't take the curtness personally. Do as the locals do. Be direct, Don't waste time with niceties, and try not to seem overly friendly. You'll get on just fine, even if you never do make any new best friends. All said, I can't deny these countries have a lot to offer travelers. Just go in with realistic expectations about the warm and fuzzy reception you're likely to receive. After all, for some of us, encountering different cultural attitudes is all part of the adventure of travel. The Spanish and Italians used to love tourists. All those drunk Brits and tacky Americans sloshing sangria and throwing coins in fountains were a cash cow. Now the younger generation can't stand us. Maybe they got sick of cleaning up after us, or watching their culture get Disneyfied for the gram. In Spain, the sight of another sunburnt tourist makes locals see red, not the bull. The kids roll their eyes when you butcher por favor and gracias while demanding tapas in San Miguel. They'd rather you didn't come at all, especially in Barcelona where tourism has wrecked the place. The old folks still smile as they collect your euros, but their kids want you out. Same story in Italy. The nonni beam as you gorge on pizza and pasta, but their nipoti are over your obnoxious photo shoots. In Piazza Navona and the Colosseum, they wince hearing you mangle buongiorno and arrivederci. Your dream trip is their daily nightmare. So do as the Romans do, and avoid other tourists. Ditch the crowded piazzas and main drags. Explore the back streets where real life happens. Smile, say please and thank you in the local lingo. Show interest in the culture beyond pizza and bullfights. Treat people how you'd like to be treated on holiday. The younger crowd may never fully embrace tourists traipsing through their towns, but if we're polite guests who try to connect with the real place, not just its postcard version, they may hate us a little less, and we'll have a richer trip discovering the country behind the cliches. As an American, I can confirm we have a reputation for rudeness that is well-deserved. When we travel, we tend to be loud, entitled, and quick to complain if everything isn't exactly as we expect. The ugly American stereotype exists for a reason. We Americans highly value our freedoms, and this seems to translate into believing we have the freedom to do whatever we want, whenever we want, no matter how it affects others. Queue jumping, talking loudly on cell phones in restaurants, and generally acting like the rules don't apply to us are common complaints about American tourists. The notion that the customer is always right has led some of us to become demanding, difficult customers who throw tantrums to get our way. The stereotypical American attitude of self-importance and ego doesn't do us any favors on the global stage. We tend to be ethnocentric, assuming our culture and way of doing things is superior without understanding cultural differences. We're quick to pass judgment on other countries without appreciating what they have to offer. Everything is compared to how we do things in America, as if that is the only benchmark that matters. While these characteristics don't apply to all Americans, there are enough obnoxious, entitled tourists from the US to earn us a reputation for being rude abroad. Of course, there are polite, culturally sensitive American travelers as well, but as the saying goes, one bad apple spoils the bunch. If we want to improve our standing in the global community, we need to check our egos at the border, open our minds to cultural differences, and make politeness as much of a priority as personal freedom. Perhaps we should take a page from our British cousins, adopt a bit of courtesy and reserve, and strive to be unfailingly polite. At the very least, we need to start seeing beyond the end of our noses, show more respect for others, and quit acting like the entire world revolves around us. There's a whole planet out there, so let's make an effort to be better guests in it. Well, there you have it, folks. The top 10 countries where the locals just can't be bothered with your annoying tourist questions or photo requests. Of course, there are lovely people everywhere, even in the grumpiest of places. So don't let this list stop you from broadening your horizons. Just do some research, learn basic pleasantries in the local language, be respectful of cultural norms, and for the love of all that's holy, don't ask strangers to take your picture. With an open mind and a sense of humor, you'll find that most places and people aren't nearly as rude as their reputation suggests. But if all else fails, there's always Canada. The Canadians will politely pretend to care about your vacation stories and even say please and thank you while secretly judging you for wearing socks with sandals.